Hello and welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg Shaped. And the word is used a lot. I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to say this one is pretty spectacular. If you're going to speak to somebody who has been seen and done, then this is the guy. We're talking a fair bit about MND, Doddie Weir, the My Name'5 Doddie Foundation, and some of the charities associated with, and also the Matt Ratana Foundation. There's a big game coming up on May the 4th to raise funds and awareness for these incredible charities. And a man who has been attached to all of those is what a character. From England, British Lions, playing overseas. He's on his bike quite often, raising money and awareness. Let's speak to the one and only Peter Winterbottom. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello. Bruce. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I'm good. Yeah.
I'm very, very pleased to have somebody who's done so much for a charity and a cause close to my heart. We'll get straight to it. Doddie Weir and you.
Yeah, I mean, it was odd, really. I mean, I obviously played rugby against Doddie, but it was never really sort of big mates with him back in the day, back when we played. And I sort of really just got to know Doddie when he was diagnosed with MND in 2017, and then I started organising a cycle event in Melrose for the foundation called the Doddie's Ride, and we've done that most years from 2018. And of course, when Doddie was alive, he was a massive supporter, and Kathy, wife, was and still is. But it was a real privilege to really get to know Doddie, because obviously he was a great guy. He was a great personality, and I think that, the fact that the charity in his name has done so well and is still going, 2 years, 3 years after he's hung up his boots, it is just testament to testament to Doddie himself.
Yeah, and the people that surrounded Doddie when he got that diagnosis, it was a real glimpse into the strength of the community of rugby.
Yes, I think it was. Yeah, but it was as much the positivity that Doddie brought to the whole party, that really made things happen. I mean, yes, there have been other rugby players who've had MND, but they've never really grasped it like Doddie did, and really driven the sort of pursuit of trying to find a cure for the disease, because there isn't one, and yes, I mean, there's a lot of research, but Doddie raised a lot of money and brought a lot of the research together, which was it wasn't just about raising funds. It was about kicking people's backsides and getting them together, and trying to coordinate research around, well, certainly in this country, but also around the world. It's as I say, it's a real testament to Doddie and his character and the sort of guy he was. Yeah.
And similar to yourself, the character, you've done what you can. So the days of lacing up the boots and playing are sadly behind, but cycling is a passion of yours, and you've used it as a way of raising funds and awareness and bringing people together.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, we've done, I have an organization called Ride of the Legends, that we have over the years have done a lot of charity events in various parts of the world. But we decided when the My Name'5 Doddie Foundation was started in 2018 that we would, everything that we would raise would be for the foundation. So every year, well, most years we have the Doddie Ride in Melrose. So this year it's July the 6th, Sunday, July the 6th. Last year we, God knows why, but decided to cycle across the states, and a number of us cycled from San Francisco to New York. which was quite an experience. And we raised, fair few bob for My Name's Doddie Foundation, but we also we had a few New Zealanders with us, and we raised money for the MND New Zealand, which was good. But it was an incredible. Sorry,
I just how do you start this stuff? So you decided, right, let's do a ride around Melrose. Then how does the idea of let's ride across America, where does that come from? Why? At some point, surely somebody said, this is a silly idea.
Yeah. Well, the longest ride I'd done before was from London to Gibraltar. So that was a couple of weeks. And I thought, well, if we're going to do something, we might as well do a proper ride. And I thought, well, 3,000 odd miles across the States would be proper. And so I phoned up Mike Teague actually and said, "Right, Teague, what do you think?" And he stupidly said, "Yes, I'll do it." And that was it really. So then it was a question of organising it, which took me forever. You can imagine, the planning, the sort of logistics to an event like that are just massive. And we did it, and we arrived in. Last June 22nd, arrived in Manhattan and had the NYPD gave us an escort through to Central Park, where we actually finished the ride. So and that was all the way from San Francisco. And you can imagine we met a lot of odd people along the way, a lot of really nice people, and the Americans were fantastic. Actually, they were very generous and very helpful and really appreciated what we were doing. So it was fun.
There's so much about just that little anecdote that cracks me up. Is Mike Teague your go-to? I've got an idea. I'm going to call Mike Teague. I know he'll join me.
Yeah, I think it's I think from our playing days, we're big mates. And we've been through a lot of experiences together, not just playing for England, but we played together in South Africa, and I think it's, if I'm going to go through the pain of it, I'm going to make sure he does it too. and stupidly he does, but but it's and I think also we're pretty much a sort of same sort of level of fitness. We're not big, we're not great cyclists. We're sort of old men that sort of quite enjoy a little tootle on the bike every now and then. But I mean, and the one thing about doing something like the States is that once you've done 100 miles, or you've done 100 miles for like a week, every day in consecutive days, you sort of know that you just got to do it again. The only big problem is that in the States there was some hills that we don't have over here. When you're going up a hill of a sort of 7.5 mile hill, and you're going 3.5 miles an hour, and you've done half a mile, and you realize that you've got another 2 hours of this, it's mentally, it's quite tough, as well as physically. Yeah.
I love that before you told that bit of the story, you said we're just two guys that like to go for a tootle on the bike.
Yes. Yeah. But that was good. I mean, there was another friend of mine from New Zealand, Craig Luxton, your viewers might know, played for Harlequins, played for England B, and he did the whole ride in the States, raising money for MND, although he's been diagnosed with dementia. So we're going to thinking about doing a ride next year in New Zealand, actually, for Alzheimer's. So it's a real shame that Luxie's got that.
Yeah, you continue to help and find ways to do it. The recruitment of Mike Teague and your old mate, is being back on the bike a bit like being back in the changing room and in the trenches in the back row, scrapping against others? You said about the mental bit, is that where that mentality can surface again?
I'm not sure if it's quite that, but I think it's just that, as we there's not many things we can do now. I mean, we can go down the gym, we can sort of stay fit. As far as events, I'm not going to run a marathon. I did once, never again. But I can't do that. So I mean, I could swim, I suppose, but that really is a bit boring. So we think, well, we'll cycle. We can do it, and it's a good opportunity for us to to get out there and for anybody of our sort of age who even has problems, health problems with their knees or ankles, or you can still do it, and you can do your bit, as so many people do for especially the My Name'5 Doddie Foundation. I mean, cycling is a massive part of the fundraising, and so many people do it because you can, and you don't have to go mad with it. You don't have to be a top cyclist. You can just tootle along, and instead of cycling 100 miles in 5 hours, you do it in 8 hours. You still do it.
Yeah, it's getting it done. When you look back to growing up in Yorkshire and being born in Yorkshire and looking at what you've done, you've come a long way from Otley, haven't you?
Well, it is a long way from Otley, yes. I mean, I was a farmer originally, and then started playing rugby for England, and that took me away from the farm, and never really went back. And then ended up coming down south. I've been down south sort of longer now than I was up north. So I can't. I'm not sure if that means I can't call myself a northerner anymore, but I think I can.
I'm pretty sure there'll be some mud slung your way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always say when I do go back up north, I always go in the local pub and get slightly into a Yorkshire accent, and my wife then says, I don't know why I bother coming into the pubs. I can't understand a word you all say, but she's a New Zealander, so she wouldn't do anyway. Yeah.
And when you played for England and then you had challenges overseas, have you always had this thing of let's go and try a challenge somewhere else?
I don't know really. I mean, rugby was really good to me. It took me all over the world, and I just loved it. I loved everything about the game, and the people involved, and so yeah. So I mean, I played in New Zealand for Hawke's Bay. I went to South Africa, played, for a couple of clubs, and then played with the Transvaal side, which is now the Lions, and it was just it was just great experience. And then then obviously when I packed up rugby, I had to start doing a bit of work, or trying to do a bit of work, and got a job in the city as a corporate bond broker. Natural progression really from farmer to, I was gym instructor then, and then corporate bond broker. Well, work that one out.
A man of many talents. How do you end up with a gig in New Zealand and South Africa? Is that just from playing against people and they say you should come and have a crack with us?
No. Well, the New Zealand one, I was young. I just got into the England side, and the club I played for was Headingley up in Leeds, and Ian McGeechan was the coach, and there was a New Zealander had come over and had approached Geach, asking him if he knew any players who wanted to go and play for Hawke's Bay, and so Geach said, mate, if you want to go, they'll pay your flight, and so I said, right, done, and I was working for my uncle at the time, and he said, well, look, if you're going to go and play in rugby in New Zealand, you're not coming back to the farm. So I said, okay, well, I'm not coming back to the farm then, and off I went. And but in rugby terms, it was a massive learning curve, and and the experience that I gained was outstanding. And then South Africa, I knew people who'd been out there. Pete Williams, the old fly half and England fly half, who actually then turned rugby league with Salford. He'd played for a club in Joburg and said, you should get out there and enjoy it. And so I did. Yeah.
And when you go to New Zealand, how did that go down at that period of time in Hawke's Bay? Englishmen playing in the back row. Did you have a target on your back?
Not really. I mean, I think that the one thing you realise when you go to somewhere like New Zealand or South Africa is that that they obviously want to see what you like, but the main thing is you've got to get stuck in. You've got to be tough. You've got to stand up to them, and so. Yeah, and that's the main thing, because rugby in those days, it was very good over there. Well, obviously still is, but it was, I mean, for example, there were no leagues in England at the time. We all played friendlies, so suddenly to go into to Hawke's Bay playing Canterbury, Wellington, Auckland, these sort of guys, week in, week out. I mean, it was a tough. Luckily we had a pretty good team, but you just knew that you had to really pitch up and you had to play tough every time, or else they'd find if you had any weak parts about your mental strength, they'd find it. Yeah.
And coming back, felt like a better player, and probably with knowledge of something else that a lot of your teammates wouldn't have had.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, certainly in New Zealand, I managed to play Ranfurly Shield against Wellington, and we played in Athletic Park with 33,000 people there. I mean, you'd never do that in England at the time. And then when I went to South Africa and played in I benched in the Currie Cup final for Transvaal against Northern Transvaal, who are now the Bulls, in front of 70,000 people at Ellis Park. I mean, so that was, it was, I think it was the sort of the professional attitude of rugby over in those countries was so different from the attitude that the players and coaches took in the UK, or probably in most of them. Maybe not so much in France, but because it was a very professional type game, although there wasn't the sort of money involved. The attitude was very professional.
Were you pinching yourself at moments like that, or were you that was just the next thing that was, you were in that environment, that was what you did? You get to a Currie Cup final, you're playing for the Ranfurly Shield. Were you just taking in your stride as a young man?
Well, I think you do, don't you? You don't quite, you just sort of go, going along with this sort of living the dream, aren't you? There's never a time I don't think I stopped and said, well, why am I doing this, or I really should sort of take this in and really enjoy it more. But I was just having a great time, great time playing rugby, around the world, and meeting lots of great rugby people, because you make friends. I've made friends all over the world, and and that's what rugby certainly was all about, and I think still is to a certain extent. I know that the game has changed a little bit, but I think I think people have a real respect for rugby people, and rugby people are generally pretty good guys.
Yeah, I think so. And when you came back, or when you were playing, was the British Lions ever something you really considered, or was that just keep doing the best I can and maybe it'll come along, or was it something you never really thought of?
No, I think everybody thinks about the chance of the Lions, because the Lions is the ultimate. for UK players. I mean, because we didn't actually have the World Cup then. So the Lions really was the pinnacle. Now the World Cup is obviously a massive event and something players will look towards playing in for their country. But you take the Lions this summer. I mean, I'm sure every player is just praying that they're going to be on that plane, because it's a massive thing to be selected in the squad. But it's another thing, I think, then to be selected in the test team, and then it's another thing to actually win a test series. I managed to get in the test teams, but never won a series, and had 2 tours to New Zealand. In 1983 we lost all 4 tests, and in 93 we won 1 and lost 2, but it was close. But I'd love to have been to be able to say that I was in a Lions test winning side, but unfortunately, I wasn't.
How did it feel when you went back with tours to New Zealand? And did you get to South Africa on a tour?
I went. No, well, I went on a tour with 2 tours actually. South Africa. I went with England in 1984. Which was the last official tour before all the sanctions were completely imposed on the country, sporting sanctions. And then I went in '89 with the World 15 for the South African centenary, and then of course South Africa opened up after that. So I was lucky really to go on tour there. It was a great place to tour at the time.
And when you go to New Zealand, when you went back, having played there, was there a familiarity? Were you able to meet up with people? What was it like returning to Hawke's Bay?
Yeah, it was good. It was good actually. I was lucky. Then that first tour, I played in the midweek game against Hawke's Bay. It was just great to get back there, and but I knew that, I knew how tough and uncompromising, the players were, which is nowadays it's changed. But I mean, you were playing for your club in England and playing friendlies every week, and every now and then you play in an international, but these guys were smacking hell out of each other in, NPC stuff. And I knew that, there was a few boys in the Hawke's Bay side who were quite handy. I've got to say, I didn't try and keep out of the way, but I sort of managed to keep out of the way of a few of them. We had a second row called Graham Higginson, who was one of the toughest boys I've ever played with or against, and also a number 8 called Ray Falcon, who was a sort of Maori boy, had no teeth, but geez, he was tough. I mean, really tough. And so it was great. It was great fun playing against them. I think we won the game as well, which was good. Yeah.
You're able to walk in with your head held high, and then the game changed. You played at a really interesting time, as the game probably was lacking for its identity, not really knowing if it was a professional game or is it staying as an amateur game. And you must have seen so many changes from the time of starting to the time of finishing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was a very amateur game, certainly in England. Back in the early '80s when I started, and the way the game changed, and I guess it was probably the first World Cup in '87 which started to push the game towards professionalism, because none of the hierarchy, certainly the RFU, had no interest in even playing in the World Cup, because they just knew that it would push the game towards professionalism, and of course 8 years later it did. But that was, you couldn't hold that back. It was always going to change, and there was always going to be then money involved in the game to players and coaches and administrators, and And you know, and it was when it did go in what 96, 97 season, it was quite peculiar, really. But it's been, you know, it's been good for the game. Not necessarily the community game, because you know it's but there's a, you know, the community game struggles with participation, but the top end of the game is you know, is far more entertaining than it ever used to be. I mean, we go back and so we look at some of the games that we played, and then they were awful, and and people said, you know, but we enjoyed it when, you know, a 9-6, you know, bashing in the rain and the mud, and you know, yeah. I mean, people nowadays, you know, unless it's you know, 30 points to 20, it's a boring game.
I'm going to ask this. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You wouldn't change the time you played, though, would you?
Well, I don't. Yeah. Well, of course you wouldn't know, because you can't. I mean, and I would say I got maximum amount of fun out of playing rugby. You know, I met so many good friends, saw so many places. You know, I just had a great time. I loved playing rugby. I loved, you know, I would play, you know, in a charity game, just a drop of a hat. I mean, I was coming back from injury once, and I played for a mate of mine. He was captain of Old Modernian second team in Leeds, and he said, we were on a Friday night in the pub. He said, well, would you play for me? I said, well, yeah, all right, yeah, I'm coming back from injury, but yeah, I'll have a game. So we went to York RI, or York Railway Institute, and I played for Old Modernian's second team, and you know, it was great. I loved it. Had a few beers afterwards, and you know, I think we won the game, and yeah. I mean, bearing in mind I was a British Lion then, and somebody in the crowd said, that number 7 of for you, Old Moz, he's a good player. You're crikey, your first team flanker must be really good. but you know, but that was a good, and I that's the great thing to me about the game, is I just wanted to play, and I don't care if it was for, you know, Old Mod seconds or Headingley or England or Lion or whoever. I just enjoyed playing.
I love it. I absolutely love that story. Yeah. And you've said it a couple of times. The people you've met, the fun that you've had. The game then finishes, and you know the game moves on. But those friendships stay, and the community you've mentioned a couple of times. It's obviously important to you.
Yeah.
And you give back in the things you do for the foundation. There's this big game coming up on May the 4th, which is a collection of MND charities and the Matt Ratana Foundation. You know, you've been good to all of them. You obviously find it rewarding, but also important to stay involved in these things.
Well, I think it's you know, look, it's about doing what you can. You know, I mean, I can only do so much. I've got a lot of other things going on, you know, in my life, but you know, you have to find a certain you can. I mean, I'm lucky enough. I can organise the Doddie's ride in Melrose. You know, I mean, I may have been a bit. You know, it was quite tough, sort of financially, going away to the States last year. But we managed to do it. But you know, if you don't, I don't think you. Well, you know, you should do that, and people should get out and you know, and support these charitable you know, events. You know, and anything you give to the charity is gold dust. I mean, you know, you don't need to, you know, hand over £1,000. You know, you give £1, you give £5, you give £10. Everything counts, because you know, it all matters. You know, and if you do that, you're doing your bit. You're doing your bit to try and find a cure for MND. You know, so that's the important thing.
And your time's obviously precious. There's lots going on, but you continue to give. You're talking about another challenge in New Zealand. Is Wints on the bike just going to keep going?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I haven't really been on the bike for quite some time. After the States, I had a slight hip problem, and I haven't done much. So it's about time I got back on the bike. But yeah, we'd like to do something in New Zealand next year if we can. But at the moment, I'm just sort of concentrating on getting the organisation right for the Doddie's ride in Melrose, and that's my focus at the moment. And hopefully we can all have a really good day on July the 6th up in the Borders. It's a beautiful part of the world. And I mean, and I've got so many friends up there, the Hastings sisters, and Roger Baird's a good mate, Gary Armstrong, Roy Laidlaw, Johnny Rutherford, so many good friends, that it'll be good to see everybody.
Amazing. And Hawke's Bay, visit Matt Ratana hails from Hawke's Bay as well. You've got ties to Hawke's Bay, so no doubt any cycle in New Zealand's going to have to spend a bit of time there. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's and New Zealand is it's quite a nice place to cycle, because actually there's not many people there and there's no cars. so we but we're planning to go from the top to the bottom, and it would be an amazing event if we get it off the ground. So fingers crossed. But yeah, I mean, Matt Ratana, it's such a sad story, isn't it? And it's amazing what people have really done in his name. And so good on them, and let it continue.
Yeah, and you continue to give what you can. Wints, I've absolutely loved speaking to you. It's been a real pleasure. I hope everything goes well for Melrose. I hope the game down in Gloucester goes well. Keep doing all the good stuff you're doing. Thank you so much for giving me your time.
All right. Cheers, Bruce.
Great to see you. Absolutely loved it. What a legend. So many stories. I think I probably could have been there for a long time, and maybe I'll get another chance. I hope you enjoyed it. If you listen, you can catch us on Apple, Acast and Spotify. You can watch on YouTube and Facebook. There's lots going on. The game on the 4th of May, all the details below. The cycle round in Melrose in July, and you can get all the information. We'll post lots and lots about that. Give what you can, just like Wint said, £1, £5, £10, whatever you can give. But if you can give 1,000, by all means, go for it. My name is Bruce Aitchison from the Happiness Is podcast, and my happiness is egg-shaped. I'll speak to you all again very, very soon. Thank you.